In today's webinar, we will have the two strong leaders from the procurement industry, Mr. Amit Gupta, who's procurement lead CAPEX at Godfrey Phillips India. In dialogue with him, we have Mr. Ajitab Sood, Chief Procurement Officer at Procol. Amit, a very warm welcome to you. For the opening, how about you take us through your professional journey and experiences so far?
Thank you, Pratibha. Thank you. Yeah, so I actually have been handling procurement from 2006. I started my career and have been handling profiles in various companies. Started my career with project procurement, technical procurement. I've started my career from working in Italy for almost a couple of years, where I handled teams and worked with people from different culture, handled procurement, developed suppliers in Indian market, then handled project procurement profile in India in various region, Kolkata region, have experience of setting up plant in Chennai City industrial area, and have experience of handling the team trainings, development, various sourcing contracts, service contracts, and then handling, heading the procurement in Havels, in Haridwar, uh, looking after direct and indirect procurement, and then pouring into capex and IT procurement for Godfrey, and of course handling a part of direct material planning, inventory management, along with various indirect spends which I've been handling currently. So have a wide experience in procurement and handling different portfolios, and understanding different challenges also in different organization. Working in different organization, have seen how different industries procurement are varying, the function is varying, and what are the challenges in each and every organization. Of course, not worked in a single sector. One company was majorly focusing into the project setups, large turnkey projects. One company is a FMEG company, mostly taking care of electrical, fast moving electrical goods, and one company which is into tobacco and cigarette manufacturing, and here handling a different portfolio altogether. So yes, it was an enriching experience for me, and have understood what are the challenges, and seeing, of course, the importance of setting up process in different organization also. So yes, I think opens up mind a lot.
Very true.
Amit, I remember my first encounter with you, wherein we were discussing about how we've had experiences in procurement as an industry altogether, and how driven you are towards giving it back to the society now. And this was the first thing that I had in my mind while we were conducting this webinar, and I'm sure this is going to go super great. I encourage everybody on this call to keep their queries coming in the chat box. We will be taking interesting questions asked by our audiences in the end of at the end of this session. I would request Ajitab to please take over from here for the dialogue with Amit.
Sure. Sure. Thanks, Pratibha. Thanks for the introductory, message. I'm really thankful to Amit today. That he has been able to spare time to have a discussion with us and enlighten us with his views. And I'm so thankful to all the participants who are here and who are about to join for this interesting conversation, that we are going to have with Amit on various things about procurement. So thanks everyone for joining in. I request everyone to keep their microphones on mute so that we can have a lively conversation. And of course, please do keep on posting your questions on the chat box so that we can take it up once the discussions with Amit are over, and I think we'll jointly address any of the questions which we might come up and we might be able to address. All right. So I think just to take this forward, Amit, and I think I just heard that you're such a enriching experience, in the last few years of your career, and especially in the realms of capex procurement and project procurement, which of course is the one of the most interesting and one of the most enriching procurement area in which we all intend to work, and which is not very easy to work in as well. So I think we'll definitely like to know more about it. And to start with, I just want to understand from you, what do you currently see are the major challenges in procurement, especially on the capex side and on the project procurement side? And how do you think you and other firms are actually managing to address those challenges which are there at this point of time?
I think when you talk about procurement as a whole, I think the lack of data management is one big challenge. You know, how you, a lot of data is available with procurement. The ERP systems are there. Some organization have, some organization don't have. So, you know, a lot of data is getting, generated in different teams within a procurement. But how do you handle that data and the transparency of that data? That is a big challenge, because if you have a structured data, you can do analytics on top of it. That is one problem. And second is about, the failure to adopt technology. That is also one area, because procurement, I think, what I've seen in earlier organization, my experience, and of course interacting with a lot of other organization also, this is one area I think where procurement is lagging. uh, any organization, if you say sales and marketing, different functions have evolved, but procurement is quite lagging behind. That is what my personal experience and opinion also. And
Mhm.
this
That's
I
right.
think procurement, being busy in their BAU activities, and being a back office kind of mentality is there. That
Correct.
procurement function needs to come out of it, because the procurement should become the knowledge house of any organization. They should be driving
Very
the
true. Mm.
innovation within an organization, which is where I think the procurement is lagging behind. And we really need to redefine our role and grow in that direction. I think that is one of the area where a procurement should really drive themselves. So, and now, of course, there are other things, like there are, challenges when you talk about there is a spend, visibility. That is one area where a lot of procurement functions, see the challenges they struggle with having a complete spend visibility. The organization have different functions, and they have different, PLN heads are there who are managing the spends, bringing them all together within a function, a procurement function, because they have the expertise to actually have visibility on the spend. So that is one area I think also, which is a problem for not only a function but for an organization itself to have a complete spend visibility. So these are a few of the areas. And then of course, when you talk about procurement, one area is contract, management. That is also one area which becomes a lot of contracts are getting generated, a lot of contracts are getting drafted, but then compliance of those contracts, management of those contracts, end-to-end life cycle management of those contracts. Of course, there are tools which are available, but I think the adoption is very slow. So
So just to add on to this question, that's a very interesting point. Amit, you have raised, and I think it's very, very relevant. To any procurement manager, and I think all of the procurement managers on this webinar would also relate to what you're saying. And I just want to add on to that, what you just said in terms of data. And I was very curious to understand, because the kind of project procurement that you specialize in, and the way you've worked in various MNCs on the project procurement side, uh, do you really feel that the influx of data typically is there, especially for procurement, is very forthcoming? Or do you think it's always been a challenge, whether it's in the Indian context, or maybe in an international context? Do you think data is really forthcoming? Is it really coming forward where a procurement manager can actually work around that data, or it's basically a challenge worldwide?
No, I think data availability is there, but the structure of the data is not in a proper manner where
Right.
it can be analyzed, it can be controlled, and of course the the abilities of the team also, because the team are always focusing on managing procurement as a process, but when
Very
it
true.
comes about analytics and those kind of abilities, that teams are not growing themselves into that. We are
Correct.
technology, when we say word technology, a lot of procurement guys are saying what is technology, they're solely focusing on the procurement process. So
True.
I think that is one part. And data availability is there, but of course you need a complete data strategy to be built. It's
Very true.
like
Yeah.
a digital transformation, so you
Mm.
need to have a data strategy also to be built. And your uh, what I've seen also, that companies adopt ERP solutions, and they feel that they have automated their process, or they have going in the direction of technology adoption. But what in what way the data is fed into those ERP systems, that is also not being taken care of properly. And whatever you
Right.
feed, that will come out of that. So
Mm.
if the data is not fed properly into those tools and technologies and systems what we are implementing, everybody is rushing to implement the solution that I should not get left behind in
Yeah.
adoption. That is what rush is happening around.
Mm.
But have we thought that how we are going to utilize that, what will be our approach,
Mm.
how we will extract value out of it? That is
Right.
also one
Very
thing.
true. Very true. And I think you just mentioned something about contract as well, Amit. And
Yes,
that's another, challenge, for especially in the areas where you work.
yes.
So, what do you think are the major challenges, in the for the procurement manager, especially in the source to contract cycle? What do you see as the major challenges that we feel, and how do you think we can overcome all of that, especially in the areas of capex procurement or project procurement per se?
Handling of contracts is one area which I am always passionate about, because I love drafting contracts. I understand the importance of contracts and how it can secure organization from any unforeseen liabilities, and
Very true.
strengthen. I think putting everything on black and white will strengthen your relationship within the supply chain with your suppliers. So you have everything quite declared and defined in the contracts. So a contract becomes your relationship first step to continue. And let's say even if there are contracts, then traceability or compliance of those contracts is not really taken care of. Okay,
Mm.
contract is done and it is kept into the file, or let's say if there are digital repositories, it is kept there. So a
Mm.
lot of tools which are available for contract management, they sometimes act like a repository. But wherein when I was during my career, when I was exploring CLM tools, I was mostly looking at the metadata and the analytics which a tool can give around it, and how it can empower. See, a CLM tool should empower your staff within a procurement function to draft complex contracts, first thing.
Correct. Correct.
And it should help them monitor those contracts and compliance of the contracts by the suppliers, by your partners, and
Mm.
then helping them manage it well. That is, I think, one area which needs to be taken care of when we deploy any kind of contract management tool. So I think this one area also needs a lot of focus.
Sure, sure, sure.
From
So, Amit, I mean, you just again, I mean, I'm picking up from what you said, and I think very interesting points coming out of the discussion when you're talking about digitization of contracts. So, if you really go into depth into the digitization of contracts per se, do you think according to procurement manager, what are the helps that he can get typically by digitization of contracts per se? In terms of maybe it is the scheduling part, or the contract period for he can get some kind of reminders, before the contract, ends? Or do you think that it is something more to that, which can be, taken care of by the contract digitization piece that you rightly said?
See, first of all, a contract management tool should actually help draft complex contracts. That is first thing I always look at, because let's say in my organization or in my earlier organization, always the complex contracts were handled by me, because the people down the line, or let's say the people who are just gaining experience, they don't understand the value of the
Very true.
contracts. And of course you have to tell them that, okay, let's say there is a civil contract which is going on at your site.
Correct.
Okay, you can put simple terms, but let's say a worker falls and some mishappening happens.
Hmm.
So what is the liability of that? It is a liability which you can't count. Being a
True.
principal employer, it becomes your liability, and of course the bodies will also say that being a principal employer, you actually compensate. So
Hmm.
those kind of things, and this is just an example. So a contract, if it is properly defined in the contract, it is whose responsibility, what all
Very
things
true.
to be taken care of. It can obviously encapsulate your organization, and that is the first thing a purchase person should do, that secure your organization from any kind of
Very true. Very
abilities.
true.
That is,
Very
I think, one thing. There should be a strong control on that. So, but can I ask my, let's say, 2 years, 3 years experience of procurement guy to draft a complex contract? No, I can't. So
true.
if I have to obviously empower my people, I have to help them with a tool or with a technology, and I think technology is the enabler in current time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can enable
Absolutely.
the process, and it can enable the team to handle the contracts well where they don't have much experience. So that is
Correct.
the first part. And of course, when the contracts are finalized, of course the tools can also help in proper negotiation of the contracts. It can ensure that a contract is done within a stipulated timeline. That is one goal which can be achieved. And then once all the contracts are finalized, it can help a procurement person to actually manage it well. Compliance of the contract by a vendor or by a partner. Of course, reminding a procurement guy regarding the timelines which are defined in the contract. So it can be
Right.
a reminder tool also for the procurement profession. And of course, that is what you know.
Correct. Correct. So I think what, according to you, is the visibility as well as the accessibility of a particular contract terms and conditions are very important.
Yeah,
I think because what happens typically is, especially the kind of contracts that you've been handling, a large contracts, mechanical, electrical, civil, where
yeah,
I think the terms and conditions run into maybe 500 different line items,
yeah.
and those terms and conditions have to be typically be absorbed, has to be typically be implemented over a period of time as and when it is being required. So I think that that's a very important point, and I think it's a very valid point that you have raised. And I think especially in the project procurement side of things, these things are very, very important for us to actually document, and of course make available to anybody and everybody who basically is working on that contract. Because a large contract maybe would be having people in different departments working on a particular contract, but they may or may not have the visibility for that terms and conditions of the contract. Very well said, Amit. I think that's a very important point. And on the on the that piece, I mean, I just wanted to check with you on what are your views on improving the visibility and the traceability of your supplier networks, because supplier networks typically are a very important ingredient of any contract management piece. So what are your views on that, and how you think that that can be improved upon in any contract management thing?
See, what is traceability? If we look at traceability, traceability is the ability actually to follow your material right from the beginning of the supply chain to the customer who actually purchases a product. So Bain did a survey in 2021, and they did a lot of almost senior professionals, and this
Right.
is 60% of the people, they view traceability as a very important area, but the implementation they find painfully complex. So
That's
implementation
right.
is one part
Mhm.
which is very painful. So the steps what should be done, traceability is of course very interesting, very
Mhm.
everybody wants to have a traceability, but you need a complete strategy to be developed around it. First thing is the uh, traceability strategy has to be defined, where it will generate the value. You know, you have to see that which area I need to focus more, where it will generate greater value. So that is one area where you need to define your traceability strategy, and then connecting this traceability to your business goals. Your business goal may be to give a very wonderful experience to your customer. So then of course your traceability strategy should be around that. Okay, let's say apparel company, a lot of companies do that. That's my customer is very focused that whether my cotton is sourced from a sustainable sources, whether child labor was not involved, and they feel proud in wearing those apparels. So of course, a company will focus on building their traceability strategy, wherein they will give the company's visibility to the customer that okay, you should feel proud to wear my cloth or apparel. So that is your business goal should be very much defined. And maybe a manufacturing company is focused on eliminating the errors or quality issues in the product. So they should develop a traceability strategy in their material movement within the manufacturing setup. That okay, by no chance my a wrong metal should go into assembly, or so they can build a complete traceability strategy within their manufacturing setup to avoid any kind of quality issues for a customer. So the customer is focusing on the quality or reliability of a product. So the traceability strategy can be different, so their business goal can be different. And then of course you have to um, next step, they should of course traceability requires collaborating, a lot of collaboration with your not only tier 1 suppliers but tier 2 tier 3 suppliers, building a
True,
complete
very true.
supply chain network, and
That's
then
true.
having a complete visibility on that. So you need very very strong collaboration in the complete supply chain, and then only you can implement these kind of strategies. Very 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 strong strategy, and a lot of companies would like to have it, but as I told you, it is very painfully
Yeah,
complex.
correct. Correct. Also, Amit, as everybody knows that the kind of spends are increasing, especially in the infra side. At this point of time in the Indian context, spends are increasing day by day. The
Yes,
industries are already, announcing large capex projects at this point of time. Every industry, especially after the pandemic,
yes, for sure.
all the industries are actually now announcing large capex projects happening. But I think the bigger question now for the procurement team, really stands is how do you actually manage this spend? You might have an expansion plan of 5,000 crores or 6,000 crores per se, but how do you actually manage that spend? I mean, that I think more and more it is becoming more and more difficult for the procurement teams to understand how this spend has to be managed in the right direction. How do we actually gain more visibility for this spend? Because you might have 5,000 crores to spend, but how do you actually have that visibility, where to spend, what to spend, how to spend, and how do you think and how you're managing that kind of a visibility within your organization, and how do you suggest that that kind of a spend visibility and spend management can be addressed by more and more companies?
Yeah. So see, first of all, we have to understand why spend management is so. What are the challenges actually? See, one thing is uh, we are not aware of the spend sources many times because we don't know where our cost is getting leaked. So understanding there is lack of awareness on the spend sources, because there are some functions where the spend is happening, but you are not actually fully aware. Maybe a CFO is not fully aware what is where the spends are going, and wherein a procurement CPO can play a role in
Correct.
collating all the information on the spending, because they have a lot of understanding of these kind of activities, so they can obviously collect all the information. So one problem is lack of awareness of spend sources, and then of course lack of data accuracy. That is also one area. Whether the
Mhm.
data which is available to me, whether that is correct. Can I make large business decisions based on that data? So
True, true.
reliability of the data is also very important.
Mhm.
And then there are when you tell a procurement team that okay, you need to do this enterprise level activity to control all the spend, they mostly they don't have sufficient resources to handle that kind of activity. It requires a complete dedicated resource or a team to handle these kind of projects or these kind of activities. So sometimes many functions lag in that also. So lack of resources also become. And then, as I told earlier, also there are poor analytical abilities also within the team, which also needs to be handled. So you sometimes here technology can play a role where it can
Very
enable
true.
the analytics on top of that. And one more challenge is what I've seen is there are different functions who are working in silos. There are even different category managers who work in silos. They handle one area, but sometimes when they interact with each other, they may work out better. Spend control on that. So that is also one area which is a problem. And different departments also handle different spends, so that also become a problem. So in many organizations, even in existing organization also, and of course it is a common phenomena wherein a brand team will be handling something,
Correct.
finance will be handling some spend, accounts will be handling some spends, legal will be handling some of the spends, corporates will be handling some spends. So
Right.
the spends are given to different heads to manage. So these kind of spends get unnoticed and uncontrolled. So that also is one area. So uh, how do you actually gain visibility? How do you control that? Is you should first start with collecting data across the organization. So of course this is one area which will touch people, and there many people face the resistance, because then you are entering the area. You can't tell each function to take out all these data and collect. You need to build a team who will be taking these kind of activities and collecting data from different functions, and then of course structuring it in a proper manner, so that let's say I have four plants and different plants have common requirement, but they are spending on their own. They have different
Correct.
own
Correct.
supply set. You need to collect data, collect them together, structure it, and then do analytics on top of that. And then you can build strategies how we can control those spends or centralize those kind of spends to control it. So
Right. Right.
that these are, I think, the process which needs to be driven. In our organization also, we have been doing these kind of activities in almost like a couple of months. We have done in within our procurement function. We have gained visibility on almost 3 billion INR of spend which was happening in the organization beyond our preview. We have
Right.
brought them within our control to handle it, and I'm handling those kind of spends and building strategies how we can control them, structure them, benchmark them. So
Right.
this is the, I think, way. If you can centralize your spends and
True.
bring within
True.
preview of so those visibility has to be increased by procurement. Their procurement can play a bigger role in that.
So, Amit, as you rightly said, I mean, I'm sure that technology definitely plays a bigger role here as well, because when you're talking about analysis of spend, we're talking about collation of spend, across multiple plants. I think the role of technology becomes paramount, because I think it really helps
Yes,
you to,
for sure.
in not only in the collation, but the overall analysis and strategizing of the entire spend, maybe across plants, maybe across, various categories. So I think that plays a very important role, and I think you have really touched a very important point as far as procurement is concerned. So I think overall, I think it's basically gaining momentum. But how do you think is technology per se? Do you think these tools really help, or they say they can just assist, or do you think they are helping us to strategize the entire spend management strategy, or to collate or formulate a spend management strategy for an organization? Do we need to do that ABC analysis to figure out, what are the spends that we need to target first, or do we do that 80-20 kind of a ratio? So, on your views, how do we attack that spend once we are analyzing the spend and strategizing the spend according to you? And have been some instances in an organization where we're able to do that. Please share with us if anything, for our insights, for our knowledge.
Yeah, I think technology, of course, plays a bigger role. In almost 3 years back, we also implemented a data lake solution, data lake within our organization, which is a very critical project because you have data being generated in different platforms, different applications, different sources are available, and different, data sources are talking a different language. So you need a common language which needs to be given. We also implemented a
Very
data
rightly said. Yeah, yeah.
and developed, structured data wherein the data is flowing, and then put tools on top of it to restructure it, extract the usable data out of it, and then we build the analytics tool on top of it, which is now
Correct.
really helping us see a common picture. My RSMs or sales managers in different locations, now they are talking a one language, that okay, my business is growing or not growing, whether the sales are
Correct.
happening, not happening, profitability increasing. So there's one common language which is now being projected to the management. There are dashboards being built up where the data are flowing and data are giving the story. So
Very good.
these
Very
kind
good.
of tools, of course, really help, and
Hmm.
they help everybody to be on the same page. And of course, we are utilizing the same, technological platform to build dashboards for procurement also, to
Correct. Correct.
gain control on the spends which are being currently managed by procurement. Now, of course, we are also now, as I told earlier, also we are slowly bringing other spends also within our business so that we can add value, of course, without disturbing, because this is one sensitive area. So we are closely collaborating with different functions to actually projecting that this activity is actually going to help them by de-risking their business, de-risking their activities, bringing large supply base in front of them so that they can take advantage of that, and we are getting good response also. And I think
True.
this is the way you can bring spends within your control, because PNL heads are different, and they of course handle, and they really don't like entering their area. So
Correct.
of course, as again coming back to the subject, technology is a very, very big enabler. It can
Yeah.
bring transparency into the process. It can automate your process. It can, of course, help you analyze it, and it is the enabler actually.
Correct. Correct.
Will
Correct.
be there. Humans will be there to actually model the solutions, but at the end, technology will be the doer. They can do. They can enable people to take the right decisions.
Very
uh,
true.
I think that is
No,
what.
of course. I mean, very, very rightly said, Amit. And I think leaders like you are taking that initiative in the industry, especially in the procurement space, to digitize the entire spend. I'm sure that many procurement leaders who are there in this webinar as well are actually looking and thinking on how we can actually digitize their entire procurement spend, and how they can actually use, various tools, for managing their spend overall and getting more visibility on the overall spend that they control. So that's of course, but that I think overall in the Indian context, there's a lot of challenges that we face because of the traditional legacy that we have. I mean, at this point of time, the traditional way that we have been procuring over a lot of, over a lot of decades. So, what's are your feelings and views on, what are the major challenges that you have been facing as far as digitization of, procurement is concerned, and how do you think that those can be overcome, and how we can actually get that implemented? I mean, from a technology perspective.
One thing is the mindset, that people mindset should change if, from the back office kind of support function to the function which will be leading the organization into innovations and becoming the powerhouse of knowledge for an organization. Once that mindset will change, the procurement function and the people will really take front role in implementing the technology. So that
Correct.
is one area. And the second thing is, of course, no sense of urgency, because people think that okay, my work is going on, so it is not urgent to adopt a technology.
True, true.
Right. Because mostly what I've seen is people are adopting or looking at the technologies only from that sense of fear that I am lagging behind. And somebody will say that, okay, we are very behind in adoption of technology, and the fear of being left out. I think that is the only thing which is driving people right now. But
Correct, correct.
this sense should change. People should, look at how it will, this digital transformation to lead, looking at the value which it will bring to the organization. From that point of view.
Uh, uh, yeah, please carry on. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
And then, as I told you, there are basic practical problems like lack of resources, lack of technical, that mindset, technological mindset, and analytical abilities of the people. So that is also one area which I think people should look at, because there are basic people who are being employed into the function. So now this complete transformation of the team and the development of the team also should happen in that direction. So there should be a complete, digitization strategy which a CPO should build. That, okay, this is our vision, this is what we should do, and this is our journey for the digitization, and it is not for the sake of doing digitization, but from the point of view of what role we are going to lead in future, because the future of procurement is, quite different, and it is changing a lot. A lot of organizations have, of course, taken that role. The procurement function, when I started my career with the first organization, the procurement was leading that,
The overall
yeah,
organization goals, right? Mhm.
because it is a, uh, if a project is not getting executed in a, in a defined cost, so it is going to affect the organization. So procurement was playing a very big role. But in a lot of organizations, there are, procurement is taking a back office kind of role, where it
Right,
should, this
right.
mindset should change. So I think
Correct, correct. So I think very rightly said, Amit, and I think more and more, I think when we reach out to various of our, various customers for in various different industries, we see digitization happening in silos. I mean, there could be some digitization happening in one area, but the other area is left out. So they're not really being connected together. To get the the final benefit of digitization, especially in the procurement space. So maybe one part of it being digitized, maybe the payment cycle is being digitized, but the ordering system is not, or the other way around. So how do you see that happening in the industry? What do you think is the future of procurement for the Indian industry, per se, and what is the kind of a strategy for digitization that you are following, in your organization, is something which we definitely like to know.
future is, as I told earlier also, there should be, a broader and deeper set of strategic responsibilities than ever before. Procurement has to play that role. Procurement has to lead, disrupt itself, and stay in, I think, the front of charge. I think that is what, and technology enable procurement function. That is what I see, that procurement should lead the innovation, should lead the, should become the knowledge house, should be technology driven, lot of analytics which are happening, you know, category innovations which are happening, not like a category, managers, but, innovations within a
Correct,
category.
correct.
So I think this is the role a procurement function has to play. I actually vision like this only. Procurement people look at it. Okay, what innovation has to do? Let us reach out to, procurement people, and
Right.
they will be our drivers for innovation.
Correct, correct.
And I think I really dream like this.
Very
Great
true.
procurement guys, very strong role, procurement, and they can really uh, uh, bring a lot of value to an organization.
Right, sure, sure. So I'm totally in line with that, and I think, I mean, we totally resonate with your views. Procol as an organization really resonates, and that's the reason why we've all come together to bring about one of the best solutions in the market as far as procure to pay is concerned, procure to order is concerned. as you rightly said, there are many areas, especially in the capex and in the project procurement areas where I at least from my side have not seen digitization happening place. So I think there's a lot of scope there for various digitization tools to be used. There's a lot of scope for every one of us, all the procurement leaders, to ensure that a lot of automation happens. The basic theme, of course, being automation and transparency.
Yes.
The entire procurement cycle, as we're looking at, I think there's a long way for the Indian industry to go as far as the procurement operations are concerned, as far as the automation and the transparency is concerned. And as you rightly said, I think all of us, as leaders in the industry, need to think through as to how, transparency and automation can be brought in our regular procurement cycle as such.
Yes.
Technology, it has to be used as a process. And I
Yes.
think at Procol, we firmly believe that, it is a process that matters, and it is not a standalone, technological advancement that's really going to help, any industry going forward. And I think that's the theme, that's the idea. And I really thank you, Amit, for your time. I really thank you for the insights that we have had, in this discussion. And, we look forward to working with leaders like you in order to take this procurement journey forward. Thank you so much for your time. And then I hand over this to a facilitator, Pratibha, who's there, who's been very keenly, listening to all of this. So I'll let her, take this forward and tell us more about, Procol, how we can actually, I'll just spend and request everybody to spend, just 5 minutes to understand what Procol is doing and how we can address all of these issues which Amit and I have been discussing. And I think that'll be very interesting, for all of you before we take up, the further questions.
Sure. Thank you, Ajita. Thank you, Amit and Anita, both of you, in fact, for this very insightful interaction. I strongly believe that the evolving landscape of procurement, backed by leaders like yourself, will definitely contribute to the Stone Age procurement practices to change and embrace the technological solutions that we just discussed. Before we move to the question, just a quick brief on what we as Procol do. Procol is a one-stop solution that entirely automates your procurement solution, delivering with payoffs like cost optimization, digitization, transparency in the system, and helps maintain the entire end-to-end rates, catering to industries with services like Pro Source, Pro Optimize, Pro Discover, and Pro Capital. I am putting down a small gist of the entire discussion that we had and the product offerings that we have. Anybody that's interested can quickly go ahead in the chat box here and read what the offerings are. And we will quickly move forward with the discussion on the questions posted by our audiences here. Ajita and Amit, I would highly request you all to please address these questions. Going through the first question here asked by one of our audiences, it says, why always procurement looks for cost cutting and not service quality?
A very interesting and a very relevant question. Would you like to take it, or should I take that on?
Yeah, please continue.
So I think rightly, as Amit said, it's a very interesting and pertinent question, because what happens typically in the industry, and that I think all procurement leaders actually face this problem, is every second quarter, I think we are being asked, to cut costs. So how do we do that? So I think a very interesting question is, are we really going to squeeze our customers or our vendors to an extent where they actually aren't able to operate? Or we are trying to actually create a process where we get the best price in the market. So the whole idea typically should be as to how we can actually, because we are looking at commodities today, we are looking at price rises, the war is on the horizon, commodity prices are going to increase. So are we really looking at decreasing our current prices, or are we looking at getting the best price which is available in the market? So I think the concept has to be there, rather than just decreasing the prices at any given point of time, because that's not going to happen in the realistic market. So the whole idea is to automate the process, create processes. Technology is the game changer, where we need to actually create a process where you get the best price in the market, rather than always decreasing the price in the market, because that's not going to happen every time and every time that you try. So I think that kind of a mindset will have to be inculcated, and that's on the procurement managers to actually have a very fair and open discussions with our management, saying that we should try and basically build up strategies to set up a process rather than just cutting costs, because ultimately that is going to somewhere down the line will definitely going to affect quality as well. So I think that's my take on it. Of course, and Amit can add on to what I have said, but this is what I have to say on this.
People sometimes ask me, what is this the best price? I say this was the best price at that moment and that time.
Absolutely,
There's
absolutely,
no such
absolutely.
thing as a best price at that time.
Right, right.
So I think yes, cost reduction. Of course, every organization looks at cost reduction because it will, of course, increase the profitability. So, but reducing price, of course, puts pressure on the complete supply chain. Rather, focus should be on collaborating with your partners, with your supply chain, going down the line to tier two, tier three suppliers, understanding the process, going deep into that. Maybe a wastage percentage which a supplier is considering in their costing, maybe you can work around that and reduce that wastage by
Correct.
modifying the process or increasing your acceptability limit. Maybe you don't want that kind of tight acceptable limits in a quality. Maybe you can broaden that limit, and this will reduce the wastage of a supplier. And then of
Correct.
course it will supplier will be able to reduce the cost there. So it's not only about pushing a supplier always without assisting them in working around. So I think this
Correct.
approach should also be looked at rather than keep on asking to reduce the price. So
Correct.
procurement professional also should look at this way. So that
True.
is also one thing. And as you rightly said, there should be a complete process which should be, defined. A process we should focus more on benchmarking our cost, getting the best value out of, and of course, looking at the services which a supplier is going to give. So, supplier management and understanding the supply chain, having visibility on that, that is also an important area.
Another important point, Amit, and I thought we'll take this discussion slightly in a different context, is do we really as an industry have SOPs driven on how do we actually do procurement and negotiations? I think not, because most of the people, what we are trying to do is trying to negotiate and put pressure in the traditional way of negotiations, rather than actually going into a total cost analysis to figure out, what is the actual cost and how we can actually drive efficiencies by getting into the integrities of that particular cost by doing a proper white paper study or maybe a total cost analysis of that particular service or that particular product, and then see how we can actually go about and try and reduce cost in each and every step, one by one. Also, this enables our vendors also to basically come up very transparently across us and share their costs also. And then of course, if we go about that and have a discussion around that, they'll be also fair that we'll also be able to give them a fair amount of profit, which of course they deserve when they're actually supplying the material or the services to us. So I think a lot of study has to go into a complete analysis of the total cost of the vendor as well, rather than just putting them pressure on them to reduce cost, and by telling them that you might actually lose the order. So I think
Yeah.
that's I think, and I think we should actually derive some kind of strategy or some kind of a processes, or SOPs as to how you'll actually do. For example, I've seen many companies enabling or using technology, conducting auctions or online sourcing
Yes.
events,
Yes.
and then after that, even after getting the best market prices, they again start discussing with the vendors after the online sourcing event on how they can reduce cost. Now I think it basically brings two different parameters into play. One, the vendors actually lose the entire sanctity. The entire sanctity of the process is being lost, wherein you might use an event for conducting the best getting the best prices, and we will basically declare before the sourcing event, saying that yes, we will be using this as the final negotiation tool. But I think that of course we lose the entire sanctity of the process, and of course the vendors also start actually accumulating some kind of buffers into their costing, which of course will not be revealed till the last stage. So I think we'll have to develop a particular process of negotiation within the organization, and when vendors start feeling that yes, this is the only process that will be used for final negotiation and ordering, I'm sure, based on my experience that I've seen, they'll give you the best price in an online technology platform, rather than, because the manual negotiation that we keep on doing,
Yeah. Yeah.
may or may not bring the right result. So that's the way I feel. I don't know. I mean, your views, of course.
No, no, rightly said that I think there are different strategies looking at your, supply base, what you have, what product you are sourcing, and of course, strategies have to be built around that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sure.
Ajitab, I agree what you said. I think you've touched a very important aspect of digitization of a procurement process. Vendors definitely need to feel that this is a process that the organizations have. And unless and until this demarcation is set, I believe the adoption of digitization processes would be a very difficult and a challenge for the entire industry. In the similar lines, and a very specific question in extension to the last question that I asked is how to deal with cost optimization without compromising on the quality.
I think we just this point up, in our other discussions, Pratibha, I think it's a very valid point. So as I said, the two ways we can address this is that the first thing is that first of all we need to develop a transparent process of negotiations, right? So that is something which I totally firmly believe in. If we do that, of course we'll definitely try and get the best process or the best market price that is there. Now the second aspect is that we can't keep on negotiating with the vendors and because there's a limit to negotiations as well. As the management might say that we want to reduce the prices year on year or maybe month on month or quarter on quarter, it may or may not be practically possible. So how do we do that? And as Amit was rightly pointing out, that we'll have to actually go in detail of the overall costing process and the overall cost structure of that product or service, and then try to realize that where is something that we have those efficiencies. So if it is required, that we have some tolerances as far as our quality parameters are concerned, we need to basically give that leverage to our vendors wherever it is possible, to basically ensure that we get that kind of margins and that kind of negotiation margins that we typically get in our negotiation. But otherwise, I think beyond a point it will be difficult. But yes, I think if we create as a process, we use technology, I'm sure that we'll be able to get the best quality and the best price in the market using the digitization and using the technology in place that we have. Amit, your views, please.
Yes, that for sure. The online tools will always help in getting the best prices. It will build a competitive environment, and of course, it will bring a transparent process into the procurement, negotiation. Because that is one area where the transparency has to be brought in. So that is of course one thing. And of course, when we look at cost optimization, as I told you, there is a limit, and we need to collaborate more with the suppliers. First, collaborate, set up the process, and then let us implement the tools to actually make the complete process transparent. So, and time to time, we will have to go back to the suppliers when there is a need of further optimization. You will have to go down to the supply chain and again set the process, and then again come back to the tools to actually, get those kind of
Very
things.
true. Very rightly said.
These activities have to be done time to time. And of course, you can't rely solely on pure negotiation activities, because then you can keep on discussing, and there is no transparency
There's
into
no
the
end to it. Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Yes, Pratham.
Ajita, one personal question that I have. Do you think in the Indian procurement industry, one can actually replace the human interactions or human relationships by softwares? And do you think that can be a challenge? Audiences have also been asking the cost optimization factor, because once you know that you're interacting with a software, the impact isn't as much. And let's say if you as a procurement manager directly go out to the vendor and kind of speak on the prices, it does bring in that bottom line savings that the organizations can incur. What are your views on this?
Well, if you really ask me, I think we are still a long way to replace the human brain. I think, as rightly said, we definitely the technology, especially in the procurement space, will not be able to completely replace, the human negotiation angle. But I'm saying the processes that the technology brings into place, I think, and the way the tools are being used or the technology is being used, by the procurement leaders I think is very, very important, because tool and technology is a place where it has to be used in the right place at the right time, right? There could be areas where only strategies and relationships would work. There could be areas where technology will definitely help, and there are areas where both the things put together will help. So I think there could be various categories, there could be various industries, and I think it is not, that one thing will apply for all. But I think technology today is an inseparable part of any procurement process, and I think we'll have to use that. And every industry, every leader, every procurement person will have to use that in the best possible manner, to get the best results on ground. So I'm a total believer that yes, technology is going to be here and it's going to be used more and more, in the procurement process. But how it is being used, when it is to be used, is something which, of course, respective, procurement managers have to decide for themselves, keep considering, whatever they are buying themselves.
No, truly said, Ritab. I think, see, we also have to understand that in procurement, transparency, the audit requirements, the bringing the competition environment within the supply network, that is also very important. Of
Absolutely.
course, procurement professionals can design the strategy that how a certain category has to be bought, which tools have to be adopted for what. So I think most of the our brain should go into defining the strategies and managing the supplier base, supplier management, different strategies which needs to be done. But the process, I think, I think automation will really help in bringing those process in line and bringing transparency into the process. And I personally feel that is very, very important for a procurement professional. And of course, the tool bring the competitive environment also, auction environments, auction tools, which Procure also has. And these kind of tools will really help the procurement process to, take the burden off his shoulders in doing constant negotiation, talking again and again to the supplier, discussing, following up. That is a one also one problem in Indian network where we have to follow up with a lot of
Sure.
suppliers to actually give them the right information, keep getting quotations from them, and kind of creating that bidding environment. So that also these tools will really help in that. So
Sure. Yeah. No, I think I totally agree with you, Amit. That's the reason why Procall comes into play, because we are uniquely placed in the market at this point of time to not only solve the turnaround times of the procurement cycle as such, but we also are providing services, to all our procurement leaders and all our clients, wherein we help them in strategizing what is the best bidding process in place. We also help our procurement leaders and our clients typically to get more and more new suppliers on board, either nationally or internationally, and help them basically get them on and create a more competitive environment, on the platform itself. So I think, as you rightly said, adding on to what you are saying, we as an organization are committed, as Procall, we are committed to bring in and support all the procurement leaders in the industry to help them not only in automating their entire procurement process or digitizing their process, but also providing them all the services, which they, of course, they are always, constrained to have because of the limited time they have, the kind of the pressure that they have for procurement, on a day-to-day basis. And that is where, we thought that we'll, bring in our services together and help, all those procurement leaders to, get them and support them and act as a extended procurement arm for them, to basically help them in resolving all the procurement issues. So that is where we stand. We stand with them for bringing in category expertise if they require. We stand with them to automate the entire process. We help them in creating a competitive environment and so on and so forth. So that's where Procall comes into picture. I'm hopeful that going ahead we'll be able to help more and more industry and industry leaders in this particular area.
Very, very detailed, Ajitab and Amit. With this, we embark the end of this session. Strategic advancements in the realm of present procurement system. I would really like to thank Amit for taking out time and addressing this entire gathering today. Thank you, Ajitab, for being a driving force in this entire conversation. Everybody that has taken out time today to attend this, very thankful to you all. Please be aware that we keep hosting such webinars, and I really hope that we soon have another round of webinar with Amit and focus on these strategies that we've just discussed.
Thanks, Anitab. Thanks, Pratibha.
Thank you, Amit. Thanks for sparing the time. I thank you all the procurement leaders here who are there on this platform today. Thank you very much for joining, and we hope to meet with you. We hope to interact with you very soon. For and bringing out all our services and our products. Thank you very much all for joining in. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.